And live from Austin, Texas, this is the Plutopia News Network live interview session. And our guest this evening are Bruce Elfant, the Travis County Tax Assessor-Collector and Voter Registrar, and Marianne Espiritu, Criminal Defense Attorney and Democratic Party activist. And of course, we have our usual our usual not ready for cable news players, John Lebkowski, Scoop Sweeney, that's me, and our designated driver for the evening, Maggie Duvall. Hello, Maggie.
Who appears to be in a fish tank.
Yes, yes. I'm trying to keep cool. So thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to note that Marianne and Bruce have kindly agreed to join us for our happy hour this evening because I had noted on our original post that I've had various friends reach out to me like I know anything. I really don't. Like, what are we going to do about voting and where do we go and what do we do and am I going to get shot at the polls and things like that? I mean, it's that people are that scared, you know, they're like, am I going to be threatened and am I going to be harassed? So I reached out to Marianne because she's a tireless activist for the Democratic Party in Travis County and in, it's a never ending post from her, like what she's doing this day or that day to get out the vote. She's pretty amazing. So I reached out to her to see if she could join us to just tell us a bit of what she knows or what she'd like to share. And then she suggested reaching out to Bruce. Yay, thank you. And because if anybody knows anything, it's Bruce for Travis County and beyond. So the whole idea of this is just to kind of throw it out there, see if either of you would like to dive in wherever you want. And then we're encouraging our viewers to posit their questions to us and see if we can get some answers, start some dialogue. And it's my hope too, that perhaps in the coming weeks, we might try one more, we'll just see how it goes. It's very open forum and my dog's making noise. So I'm going to put myself on mute for a moment.
And the questions will come in by our Twitter channel, which is @Plutopia. So, John.
Some of them will. I mean, either through comments or through the Twitter.
Yeah, we get comments on Facebook as well. So, John will be monitoring that and passing along to the appropriate people. And since Maggie is dog sitting, I'm going to start out right away with Bruce. And I wonder if you recognize what I'm holding up here. Does this look familiar to you?
It does. It resembles a voter registration application.
It actually is one. And that's a big subject of controversy, no thanks to certain political folks. And I got another thing here that kind of fits in with this is came in the mail today from the Center for Voter Information, who is also sending out ways to request your voter, your absentee or your mail-in ballot or your absentee ballot. And question is, there's some controversy. Some people don't think this one from the Voter Information Center is a good idea. How does the voter registrar community feel about these things?
Well, I'm not in charge of mail ballots, but I have some knowledge about them. And as long as the application is the state promulgated application and it is sent in to the local voter registrar in Travis County, it would be the Travis County Clerk's office. There's nothing wrong with it. Candidates and political parties and interest groups are all printing out these applications and sending them out to people. The key is that they get sent in to the election clerk.
So it's not an evil Antifa or communist plot to subvert the voter.
No, we'll talk about those later.
But the push to call mail-in voting from home bad it's being demonized as something that's going to destroy the voting process. Is there any thing in your experience that would indicate there's anything like that that's happened before?
No, I mean, we haven't experienced any instances of voter fraud in Travis County in decades, certainly not in my time here. The challenge for election officials is going to be to handle the unprecedented volume of mail ballots, and that's going to be the challenge. They're not that concerned about fraud. State law is pretty strict, and local election officials take their responsibilities very seriously. There are local ballot boards that have representatives from both political parties. Signatures have to be verified. So there's a number of checks and balances for mail ballots. Now, they may not all be counted by election night, but they will be counted, and they will be counted accurately.
Have you been in contact with the Postal Service about any issues that may crop up due to a huge mail-in ballot?
I have not. What we're recommending is that this is not the year to procrastinate. If you need to register to vote or update your address, do it immediately and get it in. We still have 25 days. If you're requesting a mail ballot through an application, once you get your mail ballot in, get it in quick. Don't be letting it sit on your kitchen table for days or weeks. This is not the year to do that. For voter registration, we're suggesting, don't mail anything after October 1st. October 5th is the voter registration deadline. And for turning in ballots, the county clerk is designating 3 or 4 locations in Travis County where you can do it through a drive-in procedure. So you don't have to mail them. You can bring them to one of these drive-in locations, show a photo ID, and turn it in. And I think for folks who are going to vote by mail, a lot of them are going to be more comfortable doing that this year. You don't want to mail your ballot within 5 or 6 days of Election Day.
Well, Marianne, I'd like to have you address those same issues. What are you hearing?
Well, I am hearing the same thing, that this is not the year to procrastinate. I'm going to expand on dropping off your mail-in ballot application, in that the reason they're checking IDs is it has to be you that drops it off. If it's yours, then you have to be in the car. Somebody else can drive you. You don't drive, but you have to be in the car. Somebody else cannot drop that off for you.
Where are we going to have those 4 centers, or is there a place we can go to look those up? Because I think that what we can do too is gather links to some of these resources and post them later on. But just from the top of your head, what you know so far, where are they going to be?
Well, I know where 3 of them are going to be. I don't know if there's going to be a 4th one or not. The first one is going to be downtown on 11th Street between Lavaca and Guadalupe at an old bank building that the county has taken over. And so you'll be able to do a drive-through there. There's going to be another drive-through a block south of there that is another old bank drive-through that's at about, I guess, 9th or 10th. Between Lavaca and Guadalupe. And then the third one is going to be at our office at 5501 Airport. We're going to designate one of our property tax and motor vehicle drive-through lanes for ballots only. And the county clerk says that it ought to go quick. There'll be long lines, we know that. But you'll be in your car, you'll be sitting, you'll be safe. And they think that they can do a car a minute. And so they're going to try really hard to move them through pretty quick.
That's great. And from my perspective, I would highly encourage that versus using the mail-in, because I've had 2 instances already in the last few months where mail hasn't gotten to the recipients. Like it's taken 20 to 30 days, and it was already bad enough before all this sort of hit. So, I'm just encouraging people too to really be proactive in planning this, and don't rely on the Postal Service because of all the madness. I have another question too, related to, I just wanted to go back to that one about safety. How are let's say, forget the polling areas. Let's talk about the drive-through. Are people allowed to assemble around there? What kind of security is there going to be or not?
Well, there will be security, and since it's a drive-through, we're not going to encourage anybody assembling around it because we don't want to get anybody hurt. It's not an area to assemble. Let's just put it that way. You wouldn't assemble at a bank drive-through, and you wouldn't do that here either.
Okay, I'm concerned because it seems like a lot of rules are being broken these days with people just ignoring these things, and so yeah.
There was a court decision that was in the news today regarding the way mail-in ballots are rejected. Have you had a chance to look at that and see if how that will affect your work?
Well, it won't affect my work since I'm not the elections administrator. Dana DeBeauvoir is. But that case is centered around, I believe, accepting signatures and allowing for due process by the voters. I've heard a number of stories over the years where voters said, I've been voting for 30 years and they rejected my mail ballot because they didn't like my signature, and there wasn't an opportunity for them to contest that before the election was over. And what the court's saying, I believe, is that at least part of the ruling is that the voters should have the opportunity to contest a ballot board's ruling.
Yeah, handwriting analysts say that the way you tell if a signature is forged, if it's always the same, because very few people, almost no people, write their signature exactly the same every time. I know mine looks like chicken scratches sometimes, and sometimes it looks like the handwriting teacher taught me to sign it. So that's the standards they have been using sound just pulled out to make it harder for people to vote that way.
Well, it's a challenge for election administrators because you want to make sure that the ballots are properly submitted, but you also want to give the voters the opportunity to weigh in if there are questions about it. So hopefully this ruling is going to hold up, but I think it has to go to the Fifth Circuit. So I'll light a candle for it.
So we have a question here asking whether it's safer to drop off a ballot early or to send it through the mail. And I think part of that is, are you more likely to get it one way or the other? And part of it is probably about overall safety.
Well, the mail is, if you're not doing it at the last minute, I still feel like the mail is pretty reliable. So you have, a 95, 99% chance of it getting delivered through the mail. If you drop it off in person, you have a 100% chance of it getting delivered. So there's a very high chance that the mail's going to do their job properly, except at the last few days. But if you drop it off in person, you'll have that peace of mind that absolutely that they have it. So I would encourage people who are going to vote by mail to drop them off in person, if that'll give them peace of mind.
Where are we with voter registration right now? What's the deadline for that?
The deadline for voter registration is midnight, October 5th. So we're 25 days out. And I'm glad you asked because voter registration is my responsibility. And we have just enacted a new app for helping people register to vote safely without having to leave their homes. It's called Text to Register. Text to Register. If you text the word register to I vote, application will come up. You can fill it out on your computer. Since Texas is one of the few states that doesn't allow its citizens to register to vote online, we have to print it out and mail it to you for an original signature, but we do that with a postage paid envelope. So you can go to Text to Register, complete the application online. We will mail it back to you for your signature with a postage paid envelope, and you can mail it back. Right now, this is great. When we get to about October 1st, we're not encouraging anybody to mail anything at that point. If you fill it out online, we want you to deliver it to us in person. And the last 2 weekends, the tax office will be open on Saturdays to accept voter registration applications. And on October 5th, the tax office will be open till midnight to accept applications. And there'll be a number of other locations throughout Travis County that will be open till midnight as well. And we will be working with a number of partners. In 2018, we did our midnight program and we registered 40,000 people that day. And we're expecting to do something like that again this election. So it's the midnight. I don't know why people wait till the last minute, but they do. I have a picture of somebody registering to vote at 11:57 p.m. But he's eligible and he got to vote.
Marianne, what are you hearing about voter registration drives in the Democratic Party? Is there a big push going on right now?
There is a big push. There are phone banks daily asking people if they are registered to vote, asking people to check and double check. You know, I had a situation, I don't know how this happened, but I voted in the primary in March, and then there was a runoff this summer. And when I got to vote for the runoff, they said that my address didn't match. And I had to, there's a way to fix it on site. You have to, it's a little time consuming. You have to fill out a form. But to, you know, avoid that altogether, you can check, you can double check online. You just put in, you know, I can put that, oh, we don't have a chat. Do we? Oh, we do have a chat. Sorry. Okay, mine disappeared for a second.
We have one in the Zoom, but there's also
one on Facebook.
There's one on Facebook. What were you trying to paste in?
So there's a website where you go and you just put in your name and your date of birth, and it can check and see if you are registered, and it'll say, is this your address? And if
you can paste that in. I'm sorry, if you could paste that in the chat here, I'll paste it into Facebook from the chat.
Okay.
The website is votetravis.com, and votetravis.com is a really great resource. It's a website that's jointly controlled by the county clerk in our office. You can look yourself up to make sure you're registered at your current address. You can get a copy of your specific ballot. There's a link to the League of Women Voters Voters Guide, so you can see what's on the ballot and what the candidates are saying. It shows all the polling places, early vote and election day, and it has a wait time map. And given the likelihood of long lines, the wait time map, I think, is going to be very, very useful for people.
If someone finds that
there's another question. Sorry, Scoop. There's another question in the in Facebook from Bon Davis asking if we request a mail-in ballot because we expect to be out of town, can we still vote in person?
Yes. Yes, you can bring your mail ballot to the polling place and surrender it to the polling place. What you cannot do is if you vote by mail and you get your ballot, is to go to the polling place without your mail ballot. You'll have to surrender it so we know that you've only voted once.
Yeah, that was a big point that a lot of people who are, coming down on mail-in ballots is saying, well, it'll allow them to vote twice. And that really isn't the case, is it?
No, it's not. There are safeguards. I mean, the computer system would catch that. And if you vote in person, that's going to be tabulated immediately. When they try to tabulate the mail ballot sometime later, it won't accept it if the first vote is already there.
Well, if people go to votetravis.com and find that they aren't registered for whatever reason, how late can they correct that? Is there a real time frame that it takes for that to be turned around?
11:59 on October 5th. It has to be postmarked October 5th, which is problematic if you mail it at the last minute. But if it's turned in person, it'll be eligible as long as we receive it by midnight.
No, I was really just saying, if people show that they're not registered and they want to correct that when they look themselves up, that's
yes.
Also the deadline.
Yes, for registering for the first time and updating addresses, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I've used that resource every time before my daughter and I have voted in the election. We use the resource you mentioned, and I just go into. I think it's like a fun thing to do, to check, like in an OCD fashion, like every day that I'm up to date. Like, why not? But I've told other people about it, and they had no idea. It just didn't occur to them to look that up. So I think it's important to keep stressing it over and over again. And it was incredibly helpful when we were voting in especially in like the runoff with COVID and everything like that. I just really encourage people to look at the wait time thing. So yeah, are there any, I hear in other places, other states of, a lack of, they've lessened the number of polling places and that kind of thing. Is there anything like that possible in Travis County because of COVID, or is it going to be handled differently? I know I've seen some articles here, some articles there, but I'd like to hear it from your perspective and your knowledge.
I don't know exactly how many polling places there will be, but this is going to be the highest turnout election maybe in our lifetimes. And so Dana is going to have as many as she possibly can. Her challenge is that historically, y'all remember voting at schools and at grocery stores, and they can't be polling places now. And so because of the virus, and so they're having to find other locations. And I believe the polling places are already locked in, and they may be on the Vote Travis website already. But we're not going to reduce polling places. The challenge is going to be to have enough election workers to pull this off. And what we found in March and even in July is that a lot of election workers who signed up backed out at the last minute because they were concerned for their safety, for their health. And so recruiting poll workers is going to be a real challenge. And if you know people who want to be poll workers, Dana would love to hear from you.
If people want to do that, exactly how do they contact Dana?
They would contact the county clerk's office, or they can go online. There'll be information on the county clerk's website or votetravis.com about how to sign up as a poll worker, and they get trained. And it's a great thing for young people. The legislature a few years ago passed a bill that allows 16-year-olds to actually be poll workers. And if you're a 16-year-old working the polls, it's more likely that the tradition of voting is going to be with you the rest of your life. And so if you know young people who want to do this, it'd be a great opportunity.
That's a fantastic thing to know, because I know with my own daughter, she was very adamant of like always being on top of things during the elections, and she couldn't wait to vote the first time and that sort of thing. And what a wonderful way for anybody, especially the kids, to feel, I feel there's this lack of, or people are searching for meaning and purpose, right? What better way to like be connecting with people when you feel so disconnected with people? And from what I noticed in, again, when I voted in the runoff election, it was at the Shriner Hall up in Northwest Hills area. And, they were really very super careful about distancing, and, there was a person always holding the door open for you, like hygiene stations everywhere. They moved everybody through the building, so you came in one way and went out the back door. So I just wanted to, from my experience anyway, just assure people that, all these precautions are in place. They've got the 6-foot markers all the way out the door. It moved really quickly. It seemed like everybody, even with I didn't see as many workers as I've seen in past, but everybody kind of knew what they were doing. So it was very clear and all that. So just wanted to throw that in.
Marianne,
Mentioned that the polling worker, whether you're a poll worker, you can also be an election judge, and those positions are paid positions. And so I've done, I've worked polls, and I'm not expecting payment. I do that because I care about the process, but I get a check at the end of it. So that's something pretty cool too.
Marianne, I have a legal question for you.
Okay.
There's been a lot of controversy about certain political parties urging their supporters to show up at the polls and keep an eye and make sure that, Antifa and the Communist Party isn't coming out and perverting the vote. How legal is that kind of activity at a polling place?
Well, that kind of activity, and Bruce can expand on that, but there's a certain distance that they have to stay away from the doors. So, you know, they can show up, but they're not going to be anywhere close. You can't even, like candidates can't even get close to the doors and ask people to vote for them at a certain distance.
Bruce, what's your experience on that?
You know, in Travis County, we really haven't had issues. The election judges are actually pretty good about policing their areas. They actually have enforcement authority to remove people from the polls who, you know, maybe they have candidate messages on their shirts, or they're acting out or whatever. And the poll watchers have to register with the clerk's office. And you know, each party is allowed to have a poll worker, a poll watcher, but they have to be registered, and there are rules that they have to abide by.
One of the concerns is that these armed militias are going to be showing up and staying the legal distance away. Is there any solution to that? That's actually a threat that might drive especially people of color away from the polls.
Well, if the election judges feel like it's a threat, they can contact the county clerk's office, and the county clerk will send out the sheriff or constable or police to deal with that. We haven't had issues like that in Travis County, although this is going to be an election like no other.
Speaking of the election judges, because we're circling back to that, Mary Ann, give us a little an idea of what that position is about and what it entails.
Sure. So each party gets one election judge on site at a polling place. And part of the responsibility would be to make sure that nobody's rights are infringed upon. For instance, if somebody comes and they say they're registered, but they're just not showing up, you know, there's a judge from each party there to make sure that the poll workers are doing everything they can to get that person's vote counted, or at least have them fill out the paperwork to where we can go back to the clerk's office and check to make sure that they were in fact registered, and just there was a glitch or something like that. And so I think that's the main job of the election judges, is that both parties are represented so that nobody is, you know, disenfranchised with their vote.
In the past, have you had experience with untoward things being done at polling places that your judges have spotted? What kind of things would they be looking out for?
Well, somebody like we just brought up, somebody that will try to vote even though they have a mail-in ballot. You know, I've seen a judge send somebody back home, bring me your mail-in ballot or you cannot vote here. Let's see, insisting that they are registered and they're from another county. Let's see, what else?
What about wearing political clothing, hats and such, with the messages of the candidate on them?
MAGA hats.
Polling workers are not allowed to wear anything on their shirts or their person other than I voted. I think we can wear that.
And voters can't wear anything within the 100-foot marker.
Right.
So they can't come into the polling place with a certain kind of a hat or a certain kind of a T-shirt that has a political message that it relates to the election.
No.
No. And I've seen judges suggest that they go to their car and turn it inside out. Mm-hmm. If they don't want to go all the way home. So that is one solution I've seen judges do. Or just take off your hat.
In your experience, have the two party judges gotten along pretty well, just kind of like working together, or has it been difficult at times? Or
I haven't seen any skirmishes like that.
No fisticuffs.
No.
Actually, I have a question about voting machines. If you know about that, people sometimes worry about the reliability of the voting machines, and what measures we're taking to ensure that the vote that goes into the machine is the vote that gets counted. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I'm certainly not an expert on voting machines, but I do know that they have to be certified by the state of Texas. The company has to be certified to be able to bid on the project for the county, and the machines have to be certified, and they get thoroughly tested before the election. And the public actually is invited to come watch the testing, I believe. And so, all that's obviously taken place already, I believe. It's pretty thorough, and Dana's one of the most well-respected election administrators in the country. So we're lucky to have her and her experience with this.
So do these voting machines have a paper trail? And
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And
how is that handled?
How is it handled?
Yes.
You get a paper ballot when you go to the front desk, and you stick it in the machine and you vote. And when you hit cast ballot, the paper ballot prints out your choices, and you can look at that and determine if it made a mistake or not. And then you will submit it into another machine there, so they will have that paper trail. One of the concerns that we had during the first couple of elections with the new machines is people thought, well, this is pretty cool receipt, and they walked out with their ballot, and they can't do that. That's their ballot. Their vote won't count if they don't stick that back in the machine. So we do want people to understand that. And a lot of people have voted on these machines, but the last turnout was 15%. We're going to be at 70%. So a lot of people will be voting on these machines for the first time. And we want them to know that the paper ballot that they get is for the elections clerk and not for them.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. That's a super important position for the poll workers, because I did notice when I was heading out the last time, my person, a wonderful older gentleman, was kind of snoozing a little bit, and I was just kind of starting to walk away, and then somebody across the room, not him, who was supposed to check that I did it, reminded me. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, so staying on top of that. But yeah.
So the paper ballots are deposited into a lockbox, and then here's another thing that election judges do: both judges take it to the clerk's office, take the locked box with the ballots. And so not just one judge is in possession of it, that they both go. And there was something else I was gonna say about paper ballots. Oh yeah, I think that Bruce said that some people walked off with them thinking that was the receipt. And that's not the case. There is somebody there, poll workers. So what we do is we switch positions. Sometimes I'm checking people in, sometimes I'm helping people with the voting machine, and then at the last position that you do is you're standing by the door looking at their hands, making sure that they put their ballot into the box. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Not related to anything really other than just going to go vote. You can't bring your phone. So if you have all of your candidates listed on your phone, you have to write it on a piece of paper. You can't take your phone out while you're at the machine.
I'm glad you mentioned
something
that.
Caused problems at the polls?
Yes, it has. Or people think that they can just, they have their notes section and they've listed it, or they've or a friend has texted who they should vote for, and you just can't take it out. We're watching very carefully to whether or not
the issue is you can't have a device that can take pictures in the polling place.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that statute was written a long time ago. It didn't contemplate smartphones. And, we do so much with smartphones, but we can't bring it in because the legislature hadn't updated that. So I really encourage people, because the lines are going to be really long, we don't have straight ticket voting anymore. Dana's, estimating that the average time it takes to cast a ballot is going to be significantly longer because we don't have straight ticket voting. That people figure out who they're going to vote for, from the top of the ballot to the bottom, and bring a cheat sheet with them. bring a legal women voters guide, bring a slate card from any of the political groups or campaigns or parties that you care about. And you know, it's so easy to get tripped up in judge races and whatever. And if you're sitting there for 2 or 3 minutes going, God, who was this? You're making the line longer. And so we really encourage people to bring something to help them vote as efficiently as possible.
I like to think, I think of it like as at the TSA check-in, right? It's like, don't be that person who doesn't have their laptop.
Their driver's license, right?
Exactly, or whatever. And yeah, I just because you know, I tended to think that like writing it out actually kind of blocked it in my head better. But I think of it now too, you know, having the phones in there, people could intimidate other people by just the way the world is right now with social media and stuff like that. They could take your picture and say, here's this for blah, blah. So yeah, I think I'm really, really glad you brought that up, because those are the kinds of things that, you know, people just don't think about. And I know that in the last election, you know, I because of my circumstances had to wait kind of till the last minute, and the line was really, really long. Everybody was wonderful though, right? But this is pre-COVID, but it took a really long time to get through that polling station. And I just think, you know, please folks, be proactive. You know, do things ahead of time. Don't get frustrated. You know, don't give up. Please vote. So that's just my little grandstand for the evening.
Well, for this election, are there going to be accommodations made for polling places that are overwhelmed as far as extending the balloting period?
Well, the governor actually extended the early voting for an extra week, and that's going to help some. But as long as you're in line by 7 o'clock in the evening, you'll get to cast your vote. It may take a while, and it's not unusual for the last 2 or 3 days of early voting, when the lines are really long, for the last ballot to be cast at 9 or 10 at night. This is the year to be patient. Bring a book, bring a Kindle, bring a lawn chair, bring a drink, whatever you have to do. The lines are going to be long, and they're going to look really scary because we're going to be, you know, 6 feet apart for maybe 2 or 3 blocks in places. That's why, you know, we encourage you to take advantage of the wait time map. And the other point that I would make is that I would encourage everybody who's eligible to vote by mail to do so. You're nervous about it, bring it in person, don't mail it. But the thing is that a lot of people can't vote by mail. And the more people who can vote by mail, we build capacity for those who can't. And what we don't want is those lines to look really long and scary, where people drive by and go, I'm just not going to do it. So if you can vote by mail, if you're eligible, please do so to make room for people who can't.
Did we get the eligibility criteria for that?
Sure, it's a little complicated, but well, the first parts are easy. State law says that if you're 65 and older, you can vote by mail, no excuses. If you're out of the county for the period of early voting and election day, you can vote by mail, no excuses. And if you have a disability, you can vote by mail, no excuses. This is where it gets a little interesting. The Texas Supreme Court ruled that while you cannot use the fear of the virus as your disability is in the eye of the beholder. And you can determine what your disability is. As a non-lawyer, and I may get corrected by Mary Ann, but as a non-lawyer, my advice is, if you're going to vote by mail using a disability excuse, be prepared to defend your disability.
That's yeah, be prepared to defend your disability. The fear of COVID in and of itself is not a disability, but if you have an underlying condition that would be exacerbated or even possibly deadly because of the underlying condition, I think that is a very valid excuse.
So that
in other words, if you have comorbidities, that would put you at risk for a worse case of COVID or death by COVID.
Yeah, like autoimmune issues, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, given the concern over coronavirus, what efforts are going to be made to enforce social distancing and mask wearing at the polling places? Is that possible, or is that going to be left up to the individual?
Well, the social distancing is going to be up to the election workers to try to enforce that. But more often than not, these lines are going to be way out the door. And it's really going to be up to voters to try to self-police. I mean, we can't have a police officer at every polling place enforcing that. So we got to hope that the voters are going to self-police. I'm sure not getting within 6 feet of anybody. The mask, by state law, the election folks cannot require masks. They can encourage it, they can beg for it. They're going to have masks at the polling places to give to people who don't have masks. But if you come in without a mask and demand to vote, you're going to get to vote. But Dana is going to have a voting machine way away from everybody else. It's going to be like you're in timeout when you're voting. By federal law, they can't require the mask, but they're going to do everything they can for that small segment, to allow them to vote, but vote away from people.
Will the
Really,
polling
if you're
places
not wearing
have-
a mask, you should be in timeout.
Yeah.
will there be disinfection protocols in place at any of the polling places? Because you mentioned
Yes,
special.
yes, they will have sanitizer, and they have a thing that you put on your finger to vote with that's disposable, so you don't have to actually directly touch anything. I can't remember if any pens. I don't think any pens are used at the polling place, so I don't think that that's an issue. You just with your index finger, you sign the machine, and you actually use that to vote with, and so you're not directly touching anything.
I got really frisky about the little rubber finger thing, the last one, because I was like, oh my God, I remember when I used to do filing and I had one of these things. And I haven't seen one forever, and I'm telling my daughter about it, and everyone's looking at me like I'm some kind of mutant. It was pretty funny. Anyway.
When you
Well, I'm
show
sure
up
they've
to
been
vote,
saying
Wipe down too. Right after each person, they wipe down the screens and wipe down the workspace after each person.
when you show up to vote, the people who are working the polling place will take your driver's license normally. Is that still happening? Are you going to have to hand that to them? Are they going to have to touch that?
They are going to have to touch it, or they did it at the runoff. There is a partition, a plexiglass partition, but if I remember correctly, I did have to hand it to someone. Of course, that was the time that I had a little bit of a problem with my address. So I guess I don't know the answer for people who don't have problems. But I handed mine to somebody. And
I made sure to,
too.
and I made sure to bring, when my daughter and I voted, we brought rubber gloves. We just had them with us. We had the mask, but one thing maybe that, I know people can't get close enough. They've got to maintain distance, but people are still way back in the line, promoting their candidates and all that. Maybe if people wanted to do something sort of socially conscious, they could like offer people gloves or sanitizer or something. I don't know. So I'm just trying to think of ways for people to feel more involved and engaged.
Bruce, you mentioned that they would sign on the digital screen with the finger. Is that correct? Now that
Right.
brings to mind the whole issue of ballot rejection because, mail-in ballot rejection because the signature doesn't match. But have you ever been able to sign one of those things with a signature that looks like your signature?
I sure haven't.
So that
The good news is that is not something that is looked at unless there's some other reason to question the validity of the vote being cast, unlike mail ballots where the signature kind of matters.
but it sounds like a disconnect there between the two issues there. It's like this crummy signature is okay, but the crummy signature on your mail-in ballot is not okay.
Well, hopefully when we get past this, we'll be able to go back to signing with a stylist where it'll look a little bit more like our signatures.
True. Any more questions coming in on Twitter, John?
I have not seen any more yet. I'm watching and waiting.
I like what Marianne just put up. Anyway.
Now, my background was doing some sort of disco thing, so I would recommend any of the voting guides, like League of Women Voters, for instance. You go through and circle your candidates and have that with you, because they mimic the order of the ballot on the machine, and then you just go through line by line and do it that way. I should mention, of course, that it is so very important to vote all the way down the ballot. I know that the president is the main reason a lot of people are going to be going out, but it's just so important. There are so many resources about the candidates. Of course, being with the Democratic Party, I'm going to say, vote Democrat all the way down. Make sure you go all the way down the ballot.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Here.
Some of the race, the campaign, the elected officials that impact our lives the most are kind of towards the bottom of the ballot. City and county and legislature and school board and ACC, they have big impacts on our lives. And the drop off for those races is pretty substantial. And, if you care about your city services and your taxes and environmental issues, you really ought to care about your council members. The bottom of the ballot is really important.
And your tax assessor. Bruce is
and
on
your
the
tax
ballot.
assessor, absolutely. People should care about
That's
that.
right.
Vote for Bruce.
Yes.
Well, and also it's been, the reason why a certain segment has been able to gain such a massive foothold is because they were smart a very long time ago and said nobody pays attention to these small races.
Yeah.
So let's start placing people because nobody cares, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're so surprised when all the positions are filled. So that's what I've been encouraging people. And also, the value of you feel like helpless. If you want to help, run for a small position in some way you can help, and then it starts adding up. So I absolutely agree with that.
So the question that came in was from T. Ray Calderon. He was wondering if the gold star on the driver's license has any significance as an ID for voter registration.
No, not for voter registration. I think that's more for TSA.
Okay, thanks.
Well, Bruce, we have a friend that works for a group that is involved in seeking out unregistered voters and sending them the necessary forms to register to vote. It's called Register to Vote. And have you had an influx of that kind of voter registration coming in?
Oh, yes, absolutely. They actually built on something we did a few years ago. We created the first unregistered voter maps in the country, to where you can print out your precinct and see all the unregistered addresses in your precinct. And they took it to the next level. It's called Map the Vote.
Yeah.
And if you pull it up on your phone and type in where you're standing, your address, it will tell you the 10, 25, 50, 100 closest unregistered addresses to where you're standing. And it's a very powerful tool. We've kind of outed the unregistered.
Yeah, we've
Well,
used
that's
that.
a good tool for people registering their neighbors.
Yes.
My wife is a VDO and has used that application quite a bit to make sure that people are registered. It used to be that they would walk the neighborhoods and go house to house, with voter registration forms. But of course, it's now it's kind of happening more online, just kind of finding the people and sending them to them.
I would love to throw it out for a moment and just give Marianne a chance to talk for a few minutes about anything she wants to talk about related to the election, and throw it out to Bruce. Are you all fine with that?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
I have one thing that's on my mind right now. Travis County Democrats, we're doing a huge we call it a lit drop, literature drop. We can't go door to door, but we can drop literature. We're not going to talk to anyone. We're not going to knock on the doors. we're just gonna drop the literature and go on to the next one. And we could use all the help that we can get. I will have a link for the chat. I'm gonna have to, I didn't pull it up, but that's just on my mind right now, is this Saturday from 10 to 1. If you've got from 10 to 1, there are gonna be several rally points where you pick up your literature, and you can meet people at the rally point like Wendy Davis or Congressman Lloyd Doggett, and our party chair, and others.
Is that lit drop till we stop?
Lit drop till we stop. Yeah.
Yes, I found that. I found
You found it? Okay, thank you.
And I'll paste it into the comments. That sounds like it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, where's that going to be?
You go on the link and you register, and then they'll send you information about where you are assigned to pick up your literature. And from there, you will go and be
Got it.
Yeah.
There have been reports
Actually-
of election sign vigilantes
Cool.
going around and capturing the signs that they don't agree with. Have you heard reports of Democratic signs disappearing unexpectedly? And what do you do about it?
Well, there's not much you can do about it. I've only heard of one, and it's just really a funny story. A precinct chair friend of mine, he is selling Biden-Harris signs, and so he got home and his sign was missing, and he was just fuming, and he's like, I'll bet it's that neighbor over there. But they're looking around and no other Biden-Harris signs are gone. And then he checks his messages, and one of his friends said, hey, I took your sign, you weren't home, I'm gonna pay for it. It's just that my dad wanted one and he's leaving today. And so that's really the only theft I've heard of, and it's not really a theft.
That's right.
But I've heard in the past it happens. They deface signs. There's not much you can really do about it, I don't think.
I've heard some homeowners associations try to discourage, marring their beautiful neighborhoods with election signs. That's been outlawed, hasn't it?
That's correct. There's a certain period of time where they have to allow signs. They don't have to allow it, for a November election, they don't have to allow it like in August, but they do have to allow signs during a certain period leading up to the election. I don't know what that period is. I have an HOA, but I don't have a yard, so I've never had to deal with it. I live in a building, so I've never had to deal with that. But if anybody does have a problem with that, they have to let you put signs up within a certain period leading up to the election.
One of my friends is an environmental activist and gets really upset after the election by all the signs that are left for weeks, months, even years in some areas.
Yeah.
Does the Democratic Party have a process for getting rid of the signs after the fact?
Well, the candidates are, or the candidate representatives, the people who put them up are responsible for taking them down. And my understanding is they are recycled in the recycling bins.
Mhm.
And that's the extent of my knowledge with that.
Well, it's kind of like the 360 Christmas trees, It's like, yeah, it's usually not the people who put them up that come back and take them down. You'll have volunteer groups that come out and do it. So, but it'd be kind of fun to for all of the make type people, recycle, reuse kind of people, like have parties to recycle the signs in an interesting way. All right, thank you. And how about you, Bruce?
Well, I just wanted to start by saying that the United States is 100th in the world in voter turnout. There's 99 democracies that use their franchise better than we do. And Texas is about 48th in the nation when it comes to registering and voting. The good news is that Travis County has always been that shining county on the hill. And we have one of the highest turnouts in the state. And we are so far the highest registered county of any urban county in Texas. And we're really proud of that. We're trying to lead the way to spread that to other counties. You know, a lot of the challenges when it comes to registering and voting are statutes at the state level that make it harder. Why can't you vote by mail if you want to vote by mail? Why can't we register to vote online like 40 states do? Why can't we have automatic registration like a lot of states do, or same-day registration? So there's a number of things that the legislature can do. And when people complain to me, I tell them, you know, elections have consequences. And the makeup of the legislature is going to determine if any of these reforms are actually going to be implemented. And, you know, I've been frustrated with the Secretary of State. I've had to buck them twice. 2 years ago, they demanded that I remove 4,500 registered voters from the roll because they thought they weren't citizens. And we said no, and I sued them, and we won. And last cycle, they told me we couldn't accept copies of voter registration signatures when the statute clearly says that we can accept copies. I told them we were going to accept them, and if they didn't like it, they can get a court to restrain me, or they can go change the statute, and they didn't. So, you know, local election officials need to be standing up to the state when that's necessary, and we need to be pushing on our elected officials to upgrade our election laws, and so we have the same access to voter registration in the ballot box that most other states do.
Do you think those actions by the Secretary of State's office were accidental, or was this an intentional effort to get rid of voters?
I don't want to put thoughts in their head, but they were most unfortunate.
Perhaps they need a refresher course. I have an old government teacher that probably would give them a good refresher. Now, is motor voter back in effect? I know there was some legal dispute on enacting motor voter for registering at the time of your getting your car registered or your license renewed.
Yes, when you go get your driver's license, you can register to vote. There's a paper form that you fill out and that you check the box that you want to register to vote. It's very high tech and fraught with problems. The issue that I think you're getting at is that there's a lawsuit that the Texas Civil Rights Project filed, and I think there's some other co-signers to that. It's an action argument because if you go to the driver's license office, you know, in person, manually, physically, you basically can register to vote electronically. If you go online to update your driver's license to renew it, you have to print out the application, fill it out, find a stamp and an envelope and mail it in. So if you go in person, it's electronic. If you go online, it's manual. And that is the crux of the argument that there's an equal protection issue. And the answer to that is online voter registration. And hopefully we've won at the trial level. Of course, we got to get through the Fifth Circuit. But 40 states allow their citizens to register to vote. Arizona was the first, pretty Republican state. 80% register online. They cut their costs from 83 cents a card to 3 cents a card. And their voters have much easier access to be able to vote, and it's more secure.
You would think the fiscal conservatives would be in favor of that.
Well, I would ask what business would operate this way. You know, I mentioned that we registered 40,000 people in a day 2 years ago. We had 40,000 pieces of paper that we had to decipher handwriting, deal with incomplete applications, and hope we typed them in right. What business would operate that way?
Well, I can think of one.
What private sector business?
We've got about 3 minutes left. Any final pleas from both of you? Bruce?
We got 25 days to register to vote. If you're not sure you're registered at your current address, go to votetravis.com and look it up. And you can either bring a voter registration application into our office or our drop box at the 5501 airport, or you can use the text to register function, text register to iVote, at least until October 1st. But this is the time to be making sure that you're registered at your current address.
And I hope everybody stays safe and well. If you end up sick, if you have, symptoms the day of voting, definitely do not go down there, but you can call and request curbside voting. So you don't have to be disenfranchised if you come down with symptoms, and we don't, of course, want you to go and stand in line, but if you have symptoms, you can still vote. Just call and request curbside voting.
You call your polling place, correct?
There's actually a central line.
Okay.
I will get that number to you, and we can have that posted.
That would be great. We'll put that up. That's really great to know. Thank you.
Of course. Make a note, and I'll get that number to you.
Well, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate both of you taking the time to show up. I just, it was a little experiment. I was confused why my friends were asking me, like, what do I know? So I thought, like, why not go to the people who are actually deeply involved? So thank you so very much.
Yeah, many thanks.
And thank you for your service. It's much appreciated. And
thank you, Maggie, for organizing this little clam bake.
Yeah, right on. This was fun. Thank you so much.
And with that, it's a wrap.
Right
Thanks,
on,
everybody.
Great. Thank you for having us. We
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for
Bye-bye.
inviting me, Marianne. Hopefully I'll get to see you in